If you tell me about a haunted cemetery down the road, you know what I'll do? I'll go check it out. Give me access to a haunted building overnight? Heck yeah, I'm down. Got a weird cult hanging around somewhere? I'll go talk to 'em. An interview would be awesome. I've went looking for Bigfoot and other cryptids, and even stopped watching horror movies because I've become desensitized to them. Minus messing around with a mirror in a dark room, I'm down for just about anything. Tell me about UFOs right outside? Screw that. You know what really freaks me out? Aliens. You know what people keep requesting? Aliens. Fine. I'll risk the nightmares, at least this one time. Viewer Ember Moon was the first to request this one. Lucky for me, I guess. The South gives us a case that is considered one of the most significant and well-documented cases in the UFO community. The Kelly Green Men, or as others call it, the Hopkinsville Goblins. Everyone loves a good, strange, weird, or bizarre story. Well, welcome to the American South, where dark legends and haunted history lurk around every corner. Where superstition, folklore, and a touch of backwoods magic blend with everyday culture. Some say, in order to survive. This is Dixie After Dark. August 21st, 1955, Christian County, Kentucky. 5 adults and 7 children burst into the Hopkinsville police station, frantic. They claimed their farmhouse was under attack, and that they had been holding off the attackers for nearly 4 hours with gunfire. What were they shooting at? They described short, dark figures that kept popping up in their windows and doorway. As many as 12 to 15 of them. According to the accounts from the local newspaper, Kentucky New Era, Billy Ray Taylor was one of the first to encounter the strange beings. He had went outside at around 7 p.m. to get some water from the farm's well when he saw a circular-shaped object moving through the air before landing in a nearby gully. He described it as, quote, real bright, with an exhaust of all colors of the rainbow. He said it came silently toward the house, passed over it, then stopped in the air before dropping straight down to the ground. He eased closer and saw what he described as a goblin-like creature with huge glowing eyes and hands too large for its body. He also says the creature was wearing something that looked like a metal plate. This scared Taylor, as it probably would anyone, so he retreated back to the farmhouse. Taylor and his wife were visiting from Pennsylvania, and initially the Sutton family laughed at his account. After about an hour later, though, they were all alerted by the dogs outside, barking like crazy. Taylor and Elmer Lucky Sutton went out to investigate and saw what they say was a strange glow. In the light, they saw a humanoid figure. They described it as about 3.5 feet tall, with an oversized head. Its arms extended almost all the way to the ground and had eyes that glowed yellow. The body itself gave off a strange shimmer, as if it was made of metal. The 2 men were freaked out and grabbed a shotgun and rifle. They reported that the creature raised its hands and then came toward the door. Sutton fired a shot and reports hitting it, but that the creature did a flip, scrambled upright, then fled into the darkness. The two men retreated back to the house and barred everyone inside. That's when one of the creatures appeared in the window. Another shot was fired through the window at the thing, but it again disappeared. The matriarch of the family, 50-year-old Jenny Langford, describes the creatures as, quote, "It looked like a 5-gallon gasoline can with a head on top and small legs. It was shimmering bright metal like on my refrigerator." End quote. Things then escalated when Taylor eased outside to see if they had killed any of the creatures. Those behind him said they saw a large hand with long fingers reach down from the roof and grab Taylor by the hair. The family pulled Taylor to safety as Sutton fired over the overhang of the roof. He then fired at another one of the creatures in a nearby tree. The creature was said to have, quote, "floated to the ground, then scurried into the woods." Everyone rushed back inside and spent the next few hours listening for any movement. They mostly heard scratches on the roof, but that seemed to stop around 11 p.m. That's when they fled the house for their cars and raced to the police station. The police took the report, but they were more worried about a possible gunfight between citizens than actual goblins. They sent 4 police officers, accompanied by 5 state troopers, 3 deputy sheriffs, and 4 military police from nearby Fort Campbell. Their investigation provided no evidence of the men's claims, aside from a farmhouse riddled with bullet holes. Police Chief Russell Greenwell later told investigators, "These aren't the kind of people who normally run to the police for help. What they do is reach for their guns." Officers came out again the next day, hearing reports that the creatures came back around 3:30 in the morning. The officers were unable to find any evidence. No footprints, no blood trails, no scratch marks on the roof. There was no evidence of a craft landing in the gully either. It's interesting to note that other than the quote hovering craft originally described by Taylor, they never implied aliens, even though the craze of the Roswell crash happened less than 10 years earlier. The family members involved with the encounter repeatedly referred to the creatures as goblins. The term Kelly Green Men came about much later. The initial news reports never mentioned anything referring to green in the creatures' descriptions. This is something that was later added to some newspaper stories, undoubtedly riding on the recent UFO craze that was sweeping the nation. The size of the Hopkinsville Goblins has changed a little through accounts, but remains consistent between 2 and 4 feet tall, with large glowing eyes and oversized hands. The description of pointed ears and claws were added in reports much later. So, what really happened out there? All news reports say that officials agree that there was no drinking involved that night, and that the Suttons all agreed that liquor was not allowed in the house. But 2 psychologists, Rodney Schmaltz and Scott Lilienfeld, went on record to say that intoxication may have played a role. You know, because they were there and all, right? Joe Nickel, member of the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, believes that the family misidentified great horned owls that were simply protecting a nest near the farmhouse. The size of the owls would be around 2 feet tall, coinciding with the description given of the creatures. Oh, and all this had to have happened during a possible meteor sighting, which would explain Taylor's claims of a circular-shaped light in the gully nearby. So, in short recap, the scientific explanation is that a Kentucky family living in a farmhouse in the woods didn't recognize a bird common to the area. At least one of the owls were carrying a metal plate. The backwoods Kentucky people missed nearly every gunshot fired at them. They were diagnosed as being drunk by people years later, miles away, despite police on the scene reporting to the contrary. And everything happened during a rare meteor sighting. That's just my initial take on the situation. Interestingly enough, though, some prominent UFOologists are on board with this same theory. Jerome Clark leans toward the Great Horned Owl explanation. He also adds that the light in the gully could be the result of foxfire, a bioluminescent fungus that grows on decaying wood. He does agree with the reports of the officers from Fort Campbell, though, that no evidence of a deliberate hoax was ever found. Brian Dunning doesn't necessarily agree, though. He says he can find no evidence corroborating the findings that it wasn't a hoax, but offers no evidence supporting a contrary claim. His research tends to discount the newspaper and police reports as false, though, because, quote, the 4 military police who accompanied the police officers on the night of the event were from an Army base, not an Air Force base, end quote. He doesn't elaborate as to why that one detail leads him to discount the entire report. He simply states that the reports are false because of that. The U.S. government program Project Blue Book labels the event as a hoax, but offers no further comment on it. They never investigated it on site, though. They only interviewed their counterparts from Fort Campbell that had been on the scene. The story continues to persist in the area, though, and ended up having a pretty big impact on pop culture. Steven Spielberg heard the story of the Hopkinsville Goblins from an astronomer, J. Allen Hynek, an advisor for Project Blue Book. Spielberg penned an initial story based on the events before turning to scriptwriter John Sayles for final work on it. The script was titled Night Skies and was intended to be a sequel to the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The creatures were even given personalities, 2 of them in particular. One was called Scar. He was an evil one, and could kill things by just pointing at them with a bony finger that had a glowing light at the end. To counter this personality, one of the creatures was called Buddy. Buddy was a nice and friendly creature that ultimately helped the people involved in the story. The film never materialized, though. Spielberg began having second thoughts on it because it pushed the lines of horror. He was in the middle of filming Raiders of the Lost Ark at the time, and wanted to turn to something more tranquil, in his own words. Spielberg handed off the script to screenwriter Melissa Matheson, who fell in love with the Buddy character. She wrote a different alien story based on the Buddy character, but used the glowing finger bit from Scar. She titled the screenplay E.T. and Me, which became the movie E.T. the Extraterrestrial. It seems that the character of Scar would not be outdone, though, as Spielberg would use a lot of its elements in the movie Gremlins that Spielberg was executive producer on, Scar's name being changed to Stripe. Spielberg even recycled some of the supernatural horror elements of the original screenplay into the movie Poltergeist, another movie he was co-writer on. Other movies that pull inspiration from the Hopkinsville Goblins story is Critters, Signs, and No One Will Save You. Hopkinsville, Kentucky still holds on to the initial reports and celebrates it even today. Every August, Hopkinsville hosts the Little Green Men Days Festival, a 3-day event with vendors, food, and live music and parades. I don't think this would be an event for me though. Truth be told, I put a lot more weight in the ghost and other legends we've explored here than I do aliens. That may be a lot to do with fear though. I don't like the whole abduction aspect at all. Yeah, the whole UFO and alien thing freaks me out, and I'm big enough to admit it. I'd rather deal with hauntings than all of the abductions, tests, and butt-probing mess any day.